That's it. Yep, we're good. Good to go. So the morning is about where we currently are, about the structure of the organisation, some of the current challenges, etc. Then we're going to start looking at the future. So after launch, we're going to look at the future direction of digital built environment, where we're heading. As I said before, we've got BIM, it's created that foundation, the information management through ISO 19650, but where we're heading in terms of that digital built environment. And then linked in with that, okay, so what does that mean for education, upskilling in terms of ultimately getting business as usual? That's where we want to go. That's why the BIM Academic Forum was set up, because we want to support the upskilling, reskilling, providing the education required to get business as usual. And we're still not there. And then linked with that then is, what are the key areas of research, key areas of activity that as a forum we want to prioritise now, and maybe looking for the future in terms of how we move forward to support that. And then we'll finish off with a bit of networking, a bit of teas and coffees and refreshments outside. So if you need to get off at 3:30, then please do. You've got trains to catch. But if you want to stay around for networking, then we'll be here till 4 or even later. There's a bar over the road, so we can always extend that. Okay, does that sound okay? So that's what we're doing today. We're going to do some online polling. Okay. Through slido.com. So if you've got a device, whether on your phone, your laptop, whatever, if you want to go to the link, and then you'll be prompted for that number. And then there's a couple of just test questions, really, that Paul's set up. Paul considers a couple of test questions. So if you just want to log on to that, get into that, and then to those questions, and then we'll see what those responses are. Good. I'm going to yeah.
Oh, did you?
London's in there, England's second city. I see.
You guys dropped a third.
I had to drop it into.
You dropped a third.
It's like the joke, isn't it? That's people from Leeds. What's England's second city? They said Birmingham. That's people from Manchester, who's England's second city. They said London. Yeah. Good. So Salford, London, Birmingham, Leeds. Good. Yeah.
We have a second question now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back into Slido. Second.
Okay. Schools and FEs. Good. Any providers? Yep. There's just membership trade bodies. Hey, so good. We've got some schools, FE colleges there, because that's really we've had BIM Academic Forum has had input from FEs and previously, but we really want to get more engagement with that pathway from school through to FE into universities. But they've done about 5th training providers. Yeah, good, good, brilliant. Okay, so that sort of sets the scene for today. So I'm not going to spend too long on this because I want to get into the main thrust of the day. I'm just going to give a bit of background to what the forums, where the forums come from. So these two are responsible for the forum. So in May 2011, when the slides. Thanks, Paul. Good. So back in May 2011, you may remember the launch of the BIM strategy. Professor Farzad Khosrowshahi, former colleague of mine, Professor David Greenwood at Northumbria, good long-term friend, came together and said, this transformational change that we're looking at in the industry, how do we respond as education providers? How do we respond to that? So they came together and said, what can we do about it? And they formed the forum late 2011. And really it was that response of saying, okay, this is going to impact on us as equal as it's going to impact on the industry. And that transformation needs to happen within the education environment. And how do we make that happen? How do we continue to make that happen as we still adjust to that? And part of it today is start to look at where are we now compared to where we were 2, 3, 4 years ago, or even back in 2011 as educational providers. Where are we in terms of that educational transformation to deliver the requirements to drive that business as usual? Okay. One of the things we did as BIM Academic Forum as well is align ourselves with the likes of NEMA, the BIM Task Group at the time, Centre for Digital Build Britain, and the likes, to make sure that we're responding to those requirements. And BIM Academic Forum was one of the BIM for community initiatives aligned with NEMA, but also aligning with those other initiatives. So we set out in terms of reference. I'm not going to go through that. But basically, that was our vision, mission, and objectives. Again, to support that transformational change required in education in order that we can support that upskilling, reskilling, and address the digital skills gap towards that business as usual. Okay, that's what we was about, is creating that group. So we got to around about 70 plus members representing 40, 45 plus institutions. These are not exhaustive, these are just examples of some of the institutions. And that represented across England, but we also had from Ireland as well. In addition to that, we obviously had the likes of NEMA, representative from the BIM Task Group, technology providers were involved in that, then, and others, Marek, the Autodesk, likes involved in that. In terms of schools, linking in with Alison and Class of Your Own, very active and making sure we align with what's going on in Class of Your Own, supporting school level education. Okay. And then on top of that was the professional institutions and engaging them in the conversations around how we align our response to driving upskilling and reskilling around that. So we're structured around the steering group. These are just some of the names who are either currently on that core group or have been on the core group, but basically just a number of people who support the steering and governance around that, and it's rotated over the years. Again, supporting driving that forward. So what have we done to date? So one of the big things we run is like today, workshops. We met twice a year, come together basically to drive output, not just a talking shop, but to drive output. One of the benefits, biggest benefits, talking to members of the BIM Academic Forum, particularly in the early days, but even later on, was just sharing practice, sharing some of the challenges and some of the pinch points that individuals were getting, trying to drive digital transformation education through their own institutions, and that proved really useful in sharing that knowledge of what people were doing in terms of trying to embed BIM and the wider digital transformation agenda into that. And again, as mentioned before, very much aligning and responding to the market, the BIM Task Group, Centre for Digital Build Britain, school engagement I mentioned with Alison, making sure we're trying to look at the whole pathway through that education journey. Then some of the activities which I'll touch on. One of the things we did look at, and Paul Morell's report around the protectionist approach that professional institutions were taking in terms of driving BIM. So one of the things we looked at is trying to understand where their strategic positioning was in terms of how they feel as an institution they drive the whole agenda. How do we break down that protectionism around just focusing on individual members, but actually how do the professional bodies come together as a collective, collaborative entity to drive that forward. Quite an interesting workshop we held at Huddersfield. And then a bit like we did today is looking about moving forward and keep moving forward. So just some of the activities. So we put this academic framework together. It was all around how do we embed. One of the conversations around is BIM's not a separate thing. It should never be a separate thing. It should be embedded within the current education, not a separate course, programme, module. It should be embedded within that. So we put this framework together. Is how do we embed BIM digital within our programmes, and then what are the links and connections between professional institutions, the BIM Task Group, and others to drive that. So some of the things we did the learning outcome framework for particularly for HE around this will be familiar to anyone who's written programme specs and module specs. Is around the knowledge and understanding, practical skills, transferable skills. So we looked at the level 4 to 7 and identified what are the key knowledge and understanding, practical skills and transferable skills that's required at each of those levels to provide that consistent, not being prescriptive, but providing a consistent way in which people can start to think about how do we respond to those requirements. So we've done that, and then we took that further and said, okay, can we start to break that down in terms of individual disciplines? Start to unpack that a little bit. So the four we looked at was architectural technology, construction management, civil engineering, and quantity surveying as popular undergraduate programs within the built environment. Start to unpack that a little bit and define those knowledge and understanding and transferable skills. In addition to that, did State of the Nation. So through the workshops and sharing best practice, actually, where are we in terms of BIM education? This was around 2015, I think it was. Is actually where are we in terms of level and nature of BIM education within HE, levels of external training, in terms of embedding within current programs and looking at the future. So we did a bit of State of the Nation. Okay, we ran a conference. BIMAL, Ben of Caledonia kindly hosted us, ran an international conference, looking at various themes. Over 100 delegates, papers were submitted. At that stage, we're looking at maybe setting up an EU BIM academic network that links in all the various BIM Academic Forum type initiatives around the world. And obviously, we had some industry-based case studies and education case studies. And we also looked at global engagement. So we tied into the American Interoperability Coalition, which is the BIM Academic Forum. I think, Mark, you attended some of those meetings, tying in with the EU BIM Task Group, Edu BIM in France, and trying to share knowledge across those as well. We also supported or led on developing the learning outcome framework for the BIM Task Group, okay, which then links into our own academic learning outcome framework. And we've been involved in the review of that, and now we're still involved in updating that again. And then finally, we did some work with Centre for Digital Build Britain around competency management and looking how we upskill and reskill from a competency-based management and assurance approach. One of the things we do, we focus on skills, and skills is one dimension of competence beyond, attitude, behaviours, mindsets. So we looked at how do we support Digital Build Britain and what does Digital Build Britain need to do in order to sort that upskilling, and we came up with a proposal, a future scenario of actually we need to be looking at competency management and assurance approach based on competency profiles with a digital infrastructure that allows those profiles to mediate between supply and demand of skills against activities, tasks, not against roles. Okay. That's basically the background to the BIM Academic Forum. And over to Paul, talk a bit about NEMA.
Thank you. Difficult. Speaker, so this will be good. Right. Thank you all for coming along today. Also a big thank you to Autodesk and to Trimble, who've sponsored the refreshments and lunch today. So there's a thank for your getting fed and making this possible. Also, thank you to Salford for hosting today. Again, we can't manage without support from universities and from sort of people with money to spend. So it does matter. So we're here, as Jason said, we're here to relaunch the academic forum. There's a number of reasons why we want to get this relaunched. I've got my own selfish reasons for wanting this relaunched and for pushing this. But certainly this is always meant to be something that's for academics, by academics. So I don't want to be leading each of these forums and organising all of this going forwards and printing out the name badges and stuffing them in little plastic folders. The whole point of today is to try and sort of give you ownership of this. I'm here to support it, to organise finances if need be, to get sponsors on board, but ultimately this is your forum and it's up to you to work out where you want it to be, and that's what we're here today to do. So very quickly, Vice Chair of NEMA for Education and Upskilling. My background is 25 years of teaching, information management and associated softwares. I've worked for Revit, I worked for Autodesk, I've worked for software resellers, training providers, and then ultimately spent the last 15 years designing curriculums and training programs for very large organizations and countries and things. So I took something to NEMA about 18 months ago, concept we've been working on for many years, and we've used it internally within White Frog around a more detailed learning outcome framework. And I said, there you go, you can have this. This is for the industry. This is too big to sit on our shelf. Take it and run with it. And NEMA said, thank you very much, but we don't have anybody that can do that. And here I am doing it instead. So that's why I'm in this position of bringing some kind of structure to what we're doing in education, and try and join some of the dots that need to be connected if we're going to do this properly. So what is it we're trying to do? Well, ultimately, the goals of the academic forum as was still stand. This is still meant to be a hub for all things educational. But I want to broaden the scope, broaden the connections that are made through the academic forum. I want to bring in conversations around some of the sort of trade bodies, some of the awarding bodies, some of the framework providers, and get better conversations going. Make sure that what we're providing in education is fit for purpose. And I think there's an awful lot of criticism at the moment on academia for not necessarily providing what the industry wants in terms of readiness. Students coming out of uni ready to jump into work with the skills that they need in practice. And I think because we're in a sector which is at the sort of the leading edge, we really need to be better at that. and push that forward. So that's certainly something we want to do, is to make sure we get conversations going, three-way conversations that get few people in the room with commercial practices, with the awarding bodies, the qualification bodies, to say, right, is what we are doing collectively what is required, and that's a big part of this. I want to be able to look at the educational supply chain from the perspective of the student, and I want to be able to look at how a student, someone who has shown a glimmer of interest in our industry, which, you know, something else we're going to look at, but someone who's shown a glimmer of interest in this industry, how we push that through from secondary school, through further education, through into university, through into professional practice and continued professional development. What does that look like from a student's perspective? And can we do better to support that journey? Everybody's very good in their own siloed sort of state of delivering the best they can within their field, but are we necessarily looking at it from that continuity, that journey of the student? What happens before they get to us? Could we do things better in preparing them before they get to university? And what happens afterwards? What can we do? What's the next level? What do they go on to once they leave university? So I think we need to look at that from a more holistic approach. And I also want to see more transparency in what is being taught. Part of the reason for that transparency is I think it helps us understand the strengths and the weaknesses of what we're teaching and how we're approaching certain topics. But I want to be able to sort of, and you'll understand why, with the new framework that we're looking at, having that level of understanding that if you go on a particular course, that's going to give you this focus. It's going to be perfect for this. So it almost putting some more context around some of the qualifications that are delivered. So, as I say, I want to look at the whole educational supply chain, everything from that sort of secondary school. We've got a table representing secondary schools in the room, and I want to see that sort of, you know, highlight what's good, what works throughout this whole landscape, and also not so much highlight what doesn't work, but certainly start to support what doesn't work, and see if we can't bridge some of the gaps and fill some of the potholes in that journey. You know, I think in particular, we've got, you know, around the sort of further education, I think we've got some issues in supply of knowledge. A lot of the further education, from what my understanding as I go around schools and colleges, I see that some of the colleges have less than capable of giving a full digital picture, shall we say, to students. And that's something that we need to be able to support. And maybe that's a case of some of the information, some of the knowledge, you know, kind of passing down or assisting in delivery of some of that. So again, these are the sorts of conversations, the sort of relationships we want to form through the academic forum. Yeah, so as I say, the focus is on the pathway of the learners. I want to encourage communication, not just between universities, but localized supply chain networks, feeder networks, if you like, from schools to colleges to universities within a certain region, and get that support and familiarity with what's around you and where your students are coming from. And I'm teaching you to suck eggs here, but I want to do this obviously from an IM perspective. That might be happening at your university and your outreach programs, but do you, as course leaders and as delivery partners of IM related topics, do you go out to schools and colleges, or do you leave that to a specialist IM, you know, a specialist outreach team within the university? So that's the kind of thing we want to sort of do within this network and form some of those gaps, those bridges. Oh yeah, one thing at the bottom there. My intention that we launch a student council for this, to hear what students think, what students' experience of this process is. I want their voice to be heard in this process as well. A mission statement, and by the way, all of these slides we'll make them available to everybody, so you can read these through in detail. But we've got a mission statement which summarises what I've just said essentially. But that's kind of what we're aiming for, and that we keep coming back to this when we have Sarah's session later on this morning. We'll be looking in detail about what this means, how we actually deliver against this mission statement, but also keep ourselves grounded in it, keep ourselves remembering what it is we're trying to do and why, and not, you know, try and avoid too much scope creep. Now, from my own perspective and from NEMA's perspective, and I said there was a selfish reason for wanting this forum to exist, is that I need it to be the conduit between what NEMA is doing and academia and education in general. Okay, so I'm here to listen. I'm here to find out what we can do to support you. Where can we help? What resources can we provide? What connections can we provide? What conversations can we facilitate to mean that you can do better in what you're doing, to be supported better, to feel as if NEMA are actually providing some value to the education environment. Okay, so that's what that's why I kind of kickstarted this whole conversation again with Jason and got this got us to where we are. Yeah, so we are here. NEMA is intending to be that that hub between the different people that are involved in this industry, and this is the mechanism for academia to get involved. Okay, so very quickly, I'm going to go through some of the other sort of strategic bits that I'm implementing in the education and upskilling strategy. So one of them is to look at the IMI. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the IMI, if you've already signed up to it perhaps, but essentially the IMI is an initiative which is backed by government, and public sector are brought into this approach. It is a reset, if you like, on how we approach BIM and IM. How do organisations get on board? I think with the initial mandate that came out in 2011, there was it was all very big, very broad statements, very ambitious plans that we were aiming for, and I think in many respects it was a step too far, too soon, and many organisations kind of tried to jump in, but then it fell apart because of lack of knowledge, because of lack of skill, lots of different reasons. And this IMI is more of a kind of a, okay, let's get everybody in a line and let's move forward as one approach. And that seems to be a way that we're moving. So the IMI is something which sits under NEMA, and we are kind of managing that sort of rollout and signing up of organisations. And we are encouraging universities to sign up to the IMI and teach the principles of the IMI, and to work through what it's all about in upskilling and teaching everybody within an organisation what digital and IM mean. What that means to me in the education and upskilling side is that we're providing some training material. The approach we're taking is that we are not, NEMA does not teach. We don't sort of provide training courses. We are here to support those that do. But at the same time, when it comes to something as general as the IMI, we are providing free training resources that you can then take and adapt. So we're providing a sort of toolkit of parts with lots of graphics, with lots of information on, and you can sort of take that and do with it as you will. We've got videos coming out, we've got animations and things coming out, which will all help. But it is, we're not sort of putting courses on, if in that respect. Okay, so this is one of the big things for me. The IM Learning Outcomes Framework. So this is the thing that I took to NEMA 18 months ago. This idea that we're teaching generics too often in IM. And my issue is that we're forever, it doesn't matter what your background is, what your professional status is, what organizations you work for, if you would express an interest in BIM, you are pushed towards a course which is ISO 19650 Part 2. And whether that is relevant to you or not, whether that is pertinent to your role, to your business, that's what you get. And that sort of, is something we need to change. We need to move away from this kind of idea that everybody needs to know the same things, and that we should judge everybody against one standard. What we should be doing is we should be asking, what do you need to know in order to do your job? What do you need to be able to take part, to deliver the information, to use the information, to manage the information, whatever it happens to be? What do you need in order to deliver your part of in the process? And therefore, we can judge you against how much of that you know, and what we need to teach you in order to allow you to do your job better. So the idea is we are starting by creating a master list of deliverables, of actions, of outcomes taken from many different standards, and adding into that lots of anecdotal information, stories, best practice, some of the knowledge from experience that sits out there. So we're creating a list of actions and deliverables. We're then comparing that to a list of personas. Now, I say personas deliberately because we're not talking about job roles. We're not talking about having yet another argument about what a BIM manager does. Okay, no interest in that. We're talking about personas, and a persona, in many respects, is a role which is within a much more finite context. So we're sort of looking at, if you are a site manager in construction for a hospital and you're at this stage of the process, then what do you need to know in order to do that job? So we're looking at the different personas, and we are allocating from this master list, allocating which tasks and responsibilities are applicable to that persona. Some of them will be fixed. So some of them, if you are a QS, you're a procurer, you're a lawyer, some of those actions and activities will be on you regardless of their circumstances. Others will be flexible. So if you're different parts, someday, using 19650 language, you might be the appointing party one day and the appointed party the next day, depending upon the information flow and procurement process. So there's flexibility in some of that. There's also taking into account where you are within your career. And maturity is probably the wrong word, because we're not talking about age, we're talking about maturity through the process, digital maturity, if you like. Where are you in that process? And certain things, if you're just starting out, you'll have certain responsibilities, but as you go through, you might start to need to know, so there's sort of different stages of knowledge of, learning about, responsibility for, oversight of. And some people want in different stages of that for different tasks. So it's not just about having a single way of teaching a particular topic, because it depends on the depth you need to go into that topic. And then importantly, we need to be able to look at the stories behind all of that. So not just what does the dry language of the standard say you've got to deliver. There's no point in replicating what's in the standards in that sort of generic language. We need to turn that into a story. What does that mean to the individual? What does it mean if you are an architectural technician and you're weaving your way through this process? It started out in nasty spreadsheet form. There's too many depths to this, too many dimensions to this for it to exist in Excel form. It's going to be about data science to work out how we do all of that, and that's going to be a big thing. But the idea is that an organization can look at the master list and filter out what is required for a particular role, for a particular requirement. And then we can say, right, you need to know these things to the following degree and what priority is, and it gives us a knowledge shape. Now, this knowledge shape can be about what maybe it's an institution that wants to know what's the IM requirements of our membership. It could be, ultimately, it could be about HR, trying to understand what skills are required of an individual. It could be about somebody that's in the contract negotiations, trying to understand who within the supply chain as an organization level who within the supply chain has the right skills or needs upskilling. Ultimately, it could be about, and this is why we're here today, and this is why this is an educational framework, is that it could be about what your course contains. So what, if you come onto one of our courses, this is what you'll come out at the end with. This is what we focus on. These are the areas where we can see. And therefore, you might have an employer that says, right, we're going to target the students that come out, the graduates that come out from this course, because they are teaching exactly what we need for our particular specifics. So if we've got the blue line that represents the requirements, the grey line represents somebody's response to that. So whether that's a self-assessment, whether that's based upon more quantitative and qualitative measurements, but ultimately we're comparing what do I need versus what can I give you, or what do you need versus what can I give you, and we can do those matches. We can compare different, as I say, candidates, organisations, whatever it happens to be, in terms of understanding how one sits against another. But ultimately, if you'll notice here, we're not sort of trying to compare everybody against the same benchmark. Again, we're coming back to that point. We are comparing each individual against what they should know in order to do their job, not a standardized approach that we're trying to move away from. Equally, this could actually be the same person. This could be, because essentially the blue line represents a question and the grey line represents the answer. So this is my requirements in blue. So this could be a job you're looking for. This could be an institution you want to join. This could be a project that you want to take part in. So it's not something that's a laminated badge. It's a very mobile, very fluid approach to how we work things. And specific to you, as I say, as an educational provider, this black line represents our current course content. The blue line represents what industry wants of us. So obviously, you know, sort of highlighting it there in dramatic terms, but ultimately, this is a mechanism for judging where we stand in terms of the requirements, where the gaps are, where we can do better. And if you look at this bottom graphic here, which is the revised version we looked at earlier, the idea that if we're comparing our supply chain capability and capacity, that we are doing so based upon a peer-to-peer review, not on this this sort of standard what do you know about 1960 Part 2. Okay. So in that respect, what we've been doing, what I've been doing over the last couple of months, we've had a series of get-togethers, a series of gatherings of subject matter experts in order to bring this list together. We're starting to pull together what good looks like, what success will look like in this regard, what we can do to actually deliver against this learning outcomes framework. We've got a plan. So we're looking at different perspectives on this approach, this problem. And there's very much a strand in here which is going to be academically led. How do we actually manage this data? What do we do with this information? How do we present it? How do we make it user friendly? This is open source data, but you know, the average person on the street is not going to be able to work out how to use this data. So it's going to be up to you know, people like you to work out what's the science behind how we present it and how we make it user friendly. Okay. Yeah. So we're looking at a different phase. I think that's enough on that one. And a lot of it will depend on how we go forwards, how we're funded. Okay. So finally, NEMA itself. It's NEMA's intention to move towards being a professional institute, towards being a chartered body. So we're looking at shifting from the way I kind of look at it is that we were the voice from government mandate. How do we translate that into what we do on the street, what we do in industry? And we're kind of doing a 180 in some respects, and we're now looking to represent you, pointing back towards government and back towards, you know, what do we as a collective want and need. So we're sort of looking at a shift. At the moment, we've got individual membership, we've got bulk membership, we've got, and it's basically you're buying into supporting NEMA, supporting the work that we're doing, to the different conferences and forums and resources that we're pulling together. So membership at the moment is something that you buy into, and we've obviously got institutional supporters and sponsors as well. I can reveal a world exclusive. Not very exciting. We are, as of today, launching student membership of NEMA, which is a discounted rate, and we're looking to sort of to encourage students in as early in their career, and looking to support them with specific student-focused advantages, and so we can see. So we'll be negotiating with course providers, professional training providers, to give discounted rates, and we're looking at mentoring programs and just general support processes for students. So that's something that we'll be releasing more information in the coming weeks to how we get sort of students in there. But ultimately, this is where we are now, and this is where we want to be. At the moment, as I say, this is a pay you £35 you're in. What we're moving towards is one where it will be based upon skills and competence. And so there's a lot of work going on in the background to build out the assessment process, the competency skills, and look at what that sort of professional status means. So where do we, what does it mean to be a member of NEMA? We're conscious of a couple of things. One is that obviously we need to be able to provide a home for information managers within the built environment who don't perhaps have a specific home at the moment. So if you are an information management professional or someone who's an academic in the field, then this is kind of the institute. This is your home. But what we're also looking to do is to provide that niche advice to other institutions. So the way I describe this is that for some of us, BIM, IM it's your safe dinner. It's your main course. For others, it's a side order of vegetables, or it's even a bowl of mayonnaise. It's just something you need to dip into and away again. It's not something that you spend a lot of time doing. And we're conscious that we need to provide for all of that. We need to provide this home for our full-time, our dedicated IM professionals, but we also need to be able to provide links to, let's say, Rix and Reba and whoever else that might want to say, well, what does the IM requirement of our membership look like? And we can work with them to define that and help them through that process. That's the intention. So from the NEMA sort of members, we're not just looking at technical skills. So it's not just about the learning outcomes framework of what the process is. It's also covering more holistic approach to competency, and also obviously within that competency, we're also looking at different levels of competency and recognizing expertise, certainly through the mentoring program and through the way we sort of advance people and look at the curriculum building around how we get people there. So if you want to know any more information about NEMA, there's a QR code there. Vice Chair of Education and Upskilling. We've also got, as soon as I said that, I thought, I don't even know what Paul's title is. What your Vice Chair of Columnist? Okay, all right. There's a techie in the corner who's also Vice Chair of NEMA. And Rachel Heaton's also coming. So she's another one. She's attending remotely now. Oh, remotely now. Oh, okay, all right. So if anybody's got any questions about NEMA specifically, we're here today. But please do get in touch. And as I say, we're listening and we're here to support. Thank you very much. So. Oh. To you, yeah. Still minutes behind. Are you? able to.
I'm just gonna put in. I don't have any slide or anything, but I'm just gonna.
Because this is attached to Teams, so if you can.
It's okay. I'll go ahead and put it too.
Okay.
Do you want me to keep this here?
No, whatever you've got no slides, you said. Well, leave that up.
So I'll introduce the panelists first.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Very nice to see a lot of familiar faces and also new faces. My name is Mohammed Mayouf. In fact, my MSc supervisor 14 years ago is actually sitting at the front table, so no pressure at all. And I'm currently an associate professor in digital construction, whichever way you want to call it, at Birmingham City University. I will be chairing the next session on basically, which includes a diverse set of panelists, and I will introduce them one by one. So we've got Adonis Haider from University of Liverpool, and we've got Alison Watson from Koyo. Please. And we also got Daisy Sharples from Burnley College, and we got Ben Wallbank from Trimble. Okay, so the objective of this panel today is primarily to shed the light on what Jason already captured on the BIM Academic Forum, but also what Paul has discussed in terms of the current and the future direction. There's so many things changing at the moment, you know. I'm parking ISO 19650 current update on the side because, you know, if we open that kind of worm, we'll probably stay here until tomorrow. But I'll start with a set of questions to the panelists and probably ask them, first of all, to introduce themselves and their background, please.
I'm Ben Wallbank. I trained as an architect in the 1980s at Bartlett, had my practice for about 13 years. Then everything went wrong and I became obsessed by, first of all, 3D modeling and then the whole data story. And I've been with Trimble for 11 years now. Oh, and I'm an ed. I'm a non-executive director for NEMA.
Hi everyone, Alison Watson, class of your own. I jumped my job as a land surveyor 17 years ago. I can't believe we're still having these conversations. Great to see so many people in the room. Cold places.
I'm Daisy. I'm a lecturer for the college for C-level.
Okay, sort of a kick-off question, probably, which is of interest to everyone. The question is for all the panelists. Where do you see the current directions and changes in BIM happening? Is it more on the technology side, the process side, or people side? So taking like a socio-technical angle in here. Maybe you want to start with academics first?
I can see all the three, but what the difference between processes, people, and technology is the pace of change. The most extreme change is in the technology side. Technology surprises us with rapid changes like internet, like smartphones, AI. BIM is like rapid change, and then the people and the processes take their time, sometimes at the turtle, very slow to adopt and cope and start to make sense of the technology. So always it's like a race, but the technology is there, and we are doing our best to catch up and try to make sense, try to cope with the new situation. Yeah, with the new situation that the technology is taking us. So all the three, but the technology is the extreme thing.
Okay, so touching on the technology, if I can go to Trimble, please, and ask you, on the technology side, where do you see the ups and downs that happened in the last at least 10 years? You know, with the introduction of ISO 19650 standards, more open standards, native models, working with open models. How did that work, you know, for Trimble as technology provider from your experience as well?
Well, I don't think that's the question that's going to be answered in the next one or two. I'm going to go back to the original question, if I may.
Of course, of course.
It's definitely all three, absolutely. of those, probably the biggest challenge, as usual, is people. The technology is indeed changing very fast. So fast, I think that even within a large global corporation dealing with technology, I can't see exactly where things are going. AI is changing things enormously fast. I think that in terms of where we need to go, I think we need to be very clear that this is about data that relates to whole life asset. And so I would hope that I'm still going to call it BAF, that the BIM Academic Forum would do what's increasingly happening within NEMA and get the asset managers involved, and perhaps some of the master's courses in asset management, get them involved in this as well. And just a beg, I'm hearing increasingly people say, oh, well, we don't need to worry about structuring our data anymore because AI will solve all of this, won't it? And the answer is, please, get your data structured, because it will help enormously still. So yes, we still need to structure our data. That's enough.
And Daisy, please, from a college, from an FE perspective, what's your perception of this?
So I think all are important, but I think there's a very strong line between curriculum, practice and theory that needs to be balanced. Often colleges may not have funding to be able to keep up with technological advancements, so curriculums are also not always developed as quickly or improved on as much as technology is advancing. Obviously, there's been a change in curriculum with the introduction of T-levels in the last few years, and traction of big techs. But part of those courses means students have to go and have work placements, which obviously focusing on the people side, because they're having to go into industry and get that experience. But it's how they're able to translate theory into practice, and making sure that we need to be able to have information accessible to tutors and to students through support from academic forums, from universities, from professional bodies as well, to actually support the delivery of these courses, to make sure that these students aren't using really basic surveying equipment when they're not able to use that data properly in industry, and kind of balancing that gap a bit more.
Thank you very much. Alison, on the same question, but also, again, from experience, how did that also move towards information management and decision making within the organization? Did BIM really make that significant step or significant advancements in decision making, information management? Of course, also copying, again, following on the same question, but at the same time, did that balance between people, process, and technology did help to manage information better and improve decision making over time?
So this is the third conference I've been on this in 3 days. Can't believe that, we were sort of 2011, we were all quite excited by the BIM Monday. I certainly was. And went to see Paul Morrell the following week to say, let's join up education with this. Education has to go with that Monday. We can't expect the industry, because by the time we hit 2016, most of those people we're talking about in education will be probably in the built environment, or will have lost them. And of course, Paul's remit wasn't education, but Peter Hansford's certainly was. And even when the construction 2025 white paper came out, bear in mind that was 2025 we had last year, did we meet all those opportunities, all those kind of aspirations? No, probably not. And the crazy thing now, I just feel that we as an organisation are working in schools, colleges, and universities, and industry and professional bodies. I was the president of the Chartered Institution of the Civil Engineering Surveyors up to last September. I'm doing more work in Malaysia at the moment than I'm in my own country, and that just speaks volumes to me. And we're just still not joined up. And I said to Jason, I'll be provocative, I am. If things get done, if you are, apart from in the UK. But yeah, I'm dismayed by the fact that Mark Farmer was stood up at the front again yesterday in the Built Environment Futures Assembly, talking about, you know, how we need to look at the skills gap, how we need to look at technology, how BIM is moving on, blah, blah. I'm like, this thing on. Mark Farmer, you know, he talked so much in his Organizer Diary report in 2016 about this same situation. We were in it, and the photographs of the young people who were in that 2016 report are now in the built environment. So the disconnect is, no matter what we teach in schools, and I would please say get involved in universities, because it's very, very hard to get your support. Salford, brilliant. University Built Environment, brilliant. That's where it ends. I was going to be something to pick me, but yeah, we need to be more joined up. The technology is advancing. The processes will not move in line with the people unless we kind of stick our heads above the parapet and join together. So the biggest sticky wicket actually is collaboration. Let's collaborate and let's start. I'm delighted that this is back together again, but let's do it properly this time and hopefully be more joined up.
You've already led into the next two questions, actually. So I'm
I
gonna,
think I've covered them off.
well, so I'm gonna go back to the academics now on the skill set. What do you see the biggest skill gaps at the moment, and how is that actually forming this joint between what's happening in industry and what's being currently taught in academia? Especially, you know, from higher education and also from FE, before we also go back to Ben and ask about the technological side and their role in this.
There's a lot of skills, not only one, but the one that I would emphasize, especially this time, I would call it the tool design skill, ability to tailor your tool, match your project workflows and your organizational workflows. It is very important, and I'm calling it. I'm trying to use a term better than programming, because I think most of the people have like phobia when you say programming. It's a big cognitive barrier, but this is no more a cognitive barrier. We have a lot of tools. We have visual programming, and now we have great assist from AI. So designing your own tool, tailoring the tool to match your own needs, and probably also creating plugins is very important, because we have wide list, long list of cumbersome and tasks that we need intensive labor, and we have a great opportunity to design, to tweak our tools to automate those tasks. Like, just to give an example from the part that I focused on, like coordination, clash detection, clash management, assignment, automated categorization of clashes, for example, or code compliance check. So these are very cumbersome tasks that needs a lot of work, and they are very manual, and we have opportunity to automate, to tailor the task, and probably design machine learning algorithms and make use of the technology. Tailoring the tool design skill. This is the main thing that we need.
And if I can follow up with Daisy on the FE side. So again, with the skill set, is this something that you see it as a profession specific or general, you know, generation specific, or is it because of the way that you teach and embed BIM in the program? How do you see it from your perspective?
Curriculums don't embed BIM as much as they should. So BIM in C-levels is a small section of design, so students just understand a small amount of information about BIM. They know what it is, they know what a CDE is, and that's about it. It's not incorporated into the curriculum. They do some elements of 3D design, but then all the other planning and scheduling, costing, all those other activities that we could embed into models and use software that's relevant to industry, it's not feasible. So the actual application of knowledge to develop towards using BIM for those students is not always achievable. but they have an understanding of the concept. So I think there's understanding of what it is, but it's a very, it's quite a far away, far off idea for them in a lot of ways. But, you know, the skills that we do teaching FE, we work with boards of employers, we work to be needs the council, we, you know, following the local skills improvement plans as well. Part of that is looking at different roles within construction, and a lot of focus on design. But as the industry is moving towards BIM, it's great if you can use AutoCAD 2D, but you need to be able to use Revit, and it's building those skills throughout to meet those needs.
Thank you very much. I think what Adonis and yourself, Daisy, established already, and also Alison's earlier discussion, it shows a lot of skill set being almost thrown out on the table. Maybe we'll need to pick what's needed, but you see, then from a technology provider point of view, how do you cope, you know, with all the emerging technologies coming into play, Internet of Things, digital twins, you know, robotics, unmanned aerial vehicles, AI? Do you see more pressure on yourselves as technology providers to accommodate all these different skill sets? Are people required to actually cope with the advancements, or are you required as technology provider to help them to cope with the advancements? What's your take on this?
Again, big questions. It's a really interesting environment to be in at the moment because AI is changing everything. Our coders don't code anymore, really. Now, what that means for the big global players, ourselves, Trimble and Bentley and Autodesk, is that a small startup can write a piece of software in days, perhaps looking at what we spent a long while developing. Now, what that means is actually the big issues are the ones around. So if you look at the diagrams of all of the large technology companies now, you'll see these big circles labeled data ocean, data warehouse, and things like that. Now, this is the idea that in all of your products, your multiple products, hardware and software, you are creating data. So what the larger companies such as ourselves can start to address, and that's really what we're trying to do, is how, and this is what the small guys can't do actually, is how you begin to get, and it's a really tricky problem to solve, but how you begin to get the data to be able to be shared between those multiple products and make use of those. And this comes with all kinds of really interesting questions, like, you know, whose data is this? So we tell all of our customers the data's yours and we don't touch it. And we're looking at all of this huge amount of data and thinking, yeah, but look at that industry insight. Wouldn't it be wonderful? And we can't use it because we've said that's yours and we won't touch it. So there are all kinds of, these are huge subjects actually. I mean, but there are all kinds of really interesting issues and really interesting things going on. I just want to go back to your understandable frustration. I always think of this a bit like football and rugby. You know, the Brits kind of invented this idea that it's not just about a bit of modelling, it's about the data running through to whole life asset management. So we've invented the thing and then everybody else is doing it. Now, I'll be a little bit political and say I think that's because we don't invest in things like NEMA. So NEMA is a bunch of volunteers. We all do it out of our wish to do this, but wouldn't it be great if government would actually invest in these things as our Singaporean and I'm sure the Malaysians and Koreans and all of if I look around the world, they all invest in these things in ways that we don't. But having said that, I would just say that when Paul Morrell started all of this in 2010, 2011, I looked at what the ambition was and I thought they're never going to do any of this. And actually, things have, I mean, I completely agree, but things have moved on tremendously. When if I think about drawing, people I train, I still do this to shape my rotary pen. The industry is now modeling, at least. It's, you know, we are collaboratively sharing, coordinating, clash taking. Where we haven't gotten, where the others are actually going a bit fast enough, is getting that data story. ISO 19650 coming out of BS 1192. BS 1192 was the first thing that I identified. We need to get to whole life asset data. That's where we're not yet, and that's this change. Why we're all relabeling away from BIM now to information management. It's how do we get that? Because that's where so much of the value of this lies. Sorry, there, I've gone on too long.
That's okay. Actually, on that note, actually, I'm wrapping up with a final question here. So I'll start with you, then move to
Okay.
Alison, and then the academic.
I'll try and be short.
One action for the next 3 years on where BIM should be moving towards. I'm really sorry, I know it's a difficult one. One action.
So I think what Paul said is so accurate, that the skills that you need as a director are not the same that you need as a project manager, are not the same that you need as a QS or whatever it is. But I would say that as tertiary education providers, you do need to give that base overview of the whole thing. So I think that's absolutely right. That, you know, if you are an engineering faculty, you will be teaching a certain set, but you do need that overall view that this is about not just the job that you're doing, but about getting data through for that whole life story. So I guess, and just a beg for you as organisations, education is possibly even more siloed than the rest of the industry. So you're all working your individual faculties. We need to find ways. I think NEMA and the Academic Forum is a way that we can do this. We need to bring all of those different disciplines to understand that they need to work together and get that data to work together.
Alison?
Yeah, to Ben's point on investment, one of the things that I would like to see, and it rolls into every question actually, is that the government starts to invest in teaching, because I'm going to point to that table over there. You've got Mark, you've got Vicky. I mean, Vicky is leading on a teacher training programme at the moment for the new hospital programme. It's got so desperate, the lack of specialist teachers, like Daisy. It's got so desperate at the moment that the new hospital programme has come to us on the back of the BIM for Education stuff we did 10 years ago to develop a qualification for good trainers. We're now taking people from industry to train them to become teachers, because we don't have good teachers in colleges. And today's, you know, Daisy will go around probably another half a dozen colleges. We work directly with C-level providers. It's a car crash. Whatever you read in the news, it's a car crash. And I'd like to think I'm probably preaching to converted in this room, because you guys don't need to be told that BIM is a great thing, that we should be doing more. But your colleagues also, you know, I did mention that there are only 2 universities that work with us, and yet, forgive me, bums on seats. They're not coming to you, closing down your courses, can't get building surveying anymore. You know, something has gone drastically wrong since 2011. And I actually brought Paul Morell and Peter, Mike Reeder, brought the head of the NHP back to a room just a few weeks ago and said, if we had have invested in teaching back in 2011 when I was advocating for it, would we have a skills gap? Of course we wouldn't have. And yet we're no different. And so that's why a lot of our work now is in Australia, Malaysia. Southeast Asia is going mad for this. And yet here we are, sat in a room, some God knows how long after we started, having the same conversations. I'm sorry, we can do something about it, but it's got to be around lobbying now, because these great little organisations like NEMA, like the BIM Academic Forum, you know, the collaborative approach now to lobby government and get education where it needs to be once and for all has to start today. So that's my challenge to all of you. Do it today, or you know what, we're going to be back here another 10 years having the same. I won't be. I will retire.
Thank you, Alison. Daisy, just one action, please.
Yeah, off back of that, yeah, I agree with what you said. there aren't enough teachers. Teachers going back into industry for many reasons. So support from other areas to come into colleges, you know, speaking as a representative would be amazing. If we got universities in, or to be able to use universities to teach and support with teaching of use of certain equipment or project delivery following critical exam periods, where we've still got to meet guided learning hours, but actually you'd probably get more students coming to you rather than your closest university because you've got engagement from C-level learners. It would work both ways. Being able to use universities to support teaching and learning wouldn't just be, you know, beneficial for everyone, but also important for students, because there's more investment in universities and certain technologies. Well, that'd be great for the students' experience.
Thank you, Daisy. And just last but not least, Relaunch.
Yeah, the thing that I would emphasize, I think that we need to change is to enhance our strategic thinking and think of the implications of what we are trying to do, what we are trying to change from a global perspective. More emphasize on the purpose for the whole thing about ISO 19650, with the main goal is to support the circularity, how to our project outcome feed the income of the project, how we emphasize more the circular BIM, the concept of circular BIM. Focus my ambition is to see more emphasis in the standards on the last missing stage, which is recycling and demolition and recycling, and how it feeds into the later project more and how its environmental impact. So circular BIM, more focus on circular BIM.
On that note, thanks all to the speakers. We only have time for 2 questions. The only capacity I have from the audience.
Nicely done.
Controversials. Can I try and combine 2 questions? So Daisy, hello, you as well. I think what you're saying is right. So I started at least country building before I came to Sheffield Hallam. We are absolutely governed sometimes by the qualification, and that really limits what we can do. But now I'm at Sheffield Hallam, what I'm finding is that disconnect. We are limited by the timely update of the qualifications in time to get these amazing updates that are coming through to the students quickly. So right now with apprenticeships, we know the standards will not change. We know that that's being held back because there are so many rush to do this absolutely correctly. But then we've got 5 years of students going through on old standards. So there's so many things that are making it really, really difficult for us to move as quickly as AI is moving, as technology is moving, and allowing the academics to catch up with that and almost teach 2 different standards of qualification at the same time. And in some classrooms, I've got 3 different standards. So I have architectural technologists and QSs and site managers all in the same class, all needing different things. So it's not really a question, it's more of a, where does that fit with what you're both saying, which I think is correct? How do we fix that? I guess that's the question. I don't know if anybody agrees.
We've got time for 1 more question.
I will respond to that. The new QAA benchmark statement for land construction, state survey, whatever it's called, has now got an information management for PBs.
We have the KSB that says it is what? So 120.
Yeah, but you would use that. The ethos of those standards you can build into your program because it's a requirement of those benchmark statement at least for QAA. We were very clear that to address whatever we call ourselves now, BIM, IM, or whatever, it's around the data and information rather than the technology. So I notwithstanding Ben sat there, I don't think we should be teaching technology as much as we do in our programs. I think we need to be teaching the why we do it, and then the stuff around that in terms of people that most people have talked about. But there are things now being built into the subject-based smart statements. You need to lobby the OICS, CIUB, and all the rest of it to make them more clear. You know, there is change happening in those standards to try and get this embedded in our university program.
Sorry, can I just pick up on that? Yeah, absolutely. It's not the how and the what, it's the why always. And even at 11 years old, we're teaching children about why do we need to know this stuff. The why is so important. But I think you guys have got your first conference. The first proper conference, because I think that so many people are the same. Either the landscape or the built environment is so disjointed. It's just a mess, and there's a lot of teachers, for a start, in colleges who don't know what they're doing. We trained Manchester College when they first launched their T-levels. We were training plasterers, dryliners and bricklayers on the stuff that we teach 12-year-olds. And the biggest problem, fear. It wasn't capacity, it wasn't ambition, it was just abject fear, because a lot of these people have still not moved into the digital world. You know, I'm writing an MMC program for the hospital program. You talk MMC to a lot of people in the trades, and they're like, "Oh, that'll never happen anyway," because government just, puts it to one side every time it's raised again. And come back to Modernize or Die. I mean, we just died then, right? Because 2016 that came out, and everybody's going to go to MMC. Every hospital was going to be built like that. The home was going to be built like that. I worked really closely with Top Hat, most building years ago. They went bust. Andrew's now the MD of, ironically, Ibstock. He's now backing bricks. So, so I really would advocate for an Educate the Educators conference if we can, because I think the more we hear of everybody's issues, like Kelly's, then we can solve it together. But again, it's this siloed approach. Professional bodies are not joined up. They're all wanting more members and all doing their own thing. It's about time we thought of everybody instead of ourselves.
We discussed that, Alison, in the Bath, didn't we?
We did.
Several workshops was around train the trainer. Yeah.
Yeah, they go to Bath together.
Yeah.
We got time just for one more question before we have this up for. Sorry.
Yeah,
We should use that, Mark.
I wasn't invited, I was good to.
You're always invited.
Mohammed Qasim, University US. I think I picked up on the point both Benedict and Alison brought up, which is the life cycle approach to information management. I think it seems like to be a theoretical thing that we all talk about. We need life cycle approach to information management. We work with, we recently finished a study with 14 largest UK contractors. Even within their own large organizations, they don't have even their own internal life cycle approach to information management. And one of the key findings is there are no use cases for a whole life cycle information management within a single large organization, let alone across the supply chain. So what's the value really? What do you expect the value for whole life cycle information management, and no benefits from it? Because this one is struggling. But there is a business case for whole life cycle information.
Well, I think there is. Actually. So look, there are lots of studies about the comparative cost between design and construction and the management of buildings. And whilst there are lots of disputed figures, they all indicate that a lot of the cost of any asset lies in that operation, that 30-year perhaps operational phase beyond that 5-year design and construction phase. If we can, and there is also acknowledgement that the handover information at the moment is frankly, as it has been for ages, awful. I remember 10 years ago speaking to Westfield as they completed at Stratford, the shopping centre, and saying, God, it must have cost you hundreds of thousands of pounds to get to your asset management, get all of this information to your asset management. And they said, no, it costs us £2.5 million. That was then. So there is no doubt that this is a problem that needs to be solved. This is what the whole drive of BS 1192 and now NEMA is. Actually, the ISO sets out how you should do this and make those soft deliverables contractual. You know, so you add into your employer's requirements, which we've always had, information requirements. The design and construction team respond with their expertise and with their how they're going to deliver those soft deliverables. So that's all there. What hasn't happened, to be brutally honest, is that bit of the OIR and AIR, because it costs somebody who practices building once a lot of money to do that. So I would hope that what the IM will do is start to get some standard information available from that side to make this deliverable. I would hope.
Okay, I think on that note also, if you want to look up the ratio 1:5 by Royal Academy of Engineering to emphasize on life cycle information, they can look it up. Never been mathematically proven, but emphasize the importance. Okay, can I have please a round of applause for the panel? I think questions like Paul and Jason. We'll have a 15-minute break. Dr. Want to catch that. Thank you all very much.
I think.
Trying to train.